Okay, so this is the video on movement 1 specifically. So we're going to go through the actual score a little bit and talk about more specifically some of the things that you could be referencing in terms of specific measure numbers. So we talked in the first video, sort of the general overview about the slow introduction, which you can see here, adagio cantabile, which means slow and in a singing style. We have this little theme here that is being introduced. And you'll notice that we don't really have a clear sense of G major. We do have a pedal C, which is horns. I know this is confusing since if you haven't taken theory, but horns 1 and 2 that are in G are playing a C, which means they actually are playing a G major. They're the tonic of G there, even though it says C, it's going to sound like G. When it plays a C, it sounds the key, and these are horns in G. So it does have that G major structure a little bit, but it's not real clear with that opening theme as much as it would typically be. Also, you'll see right away we're getting a little bit of inflection here of the C sharps. And even more so when we move into this section, you'll see all sorts of chromaticism right in through here. I'll try to highlight melodic things and I usually highlight melodic things in pink. So here's some unique melodic things that we would have here in terms of unique inflections. When we finally get into the vivace tempo, that up-tempo feel in the 6/8, it happens in A minor. You can see there are G sharps leading up to A here. And so this A minor tonality is quite unusual. And so we don't get really clear G major in that fast 6/8 section until here. So with harmonic things, I'll put those in blue, harmony type things. So this is a 1 chord in the key of G major, but we don't get that until that spot. Okay, so 1 chord in G major. And then that is kind of where we're starting that main section, that main theme. Now, the first subject that you're going to hear, the primary subject, which we hear here, is going to be repeated in some very unique ways. You're going to hear some of this this little da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. It's going to sound a little bit like some repetition and like a little bit of a broken record feel, because then it's going to repeat it again, the G to the A, going back and forth there. And you'll definitely hear it when we listen to this opening here in a second. But that kind of mechanical malfunction that we kind of talked about in that overview. We talked about the medial caesura, and the medial caesura is something that is giving us like kind of the ending to the transition. It's kind of like the transition is moving us into that new key. In this case, it's supposed to be D major. But you'll notice that we kind of get melodically stuck here a little bit at 35. And that's another one of those kind of mechanical malfunctions, I guess, that you would say. And it's kind of like the elevator gets stuck. That medial caesura, which is supposed to be that clear door opening into the new key, doesn't quite open the way it should. So it's going to sound like it gets stuck there a little bit. During the transition, we also get kind of this early development of counterpoint here. We have, and usually I put texture things when there's like kind of counterpoint things happening in yellow. So I'll highlight, you'll see this little counter melody here happening in 3 different voices. That's kind of developmental material, but it's happening in the transition. Okay. Also, another thing that Haydn loves to do is to play with the phrase structure. So like at measure 53, there's kind of this cadential expansion that happens here. This is kind of a melodic technique where you'll kind of hear that instead of having these real balanced phrases, he expands the end of the phrase, the cadence, with, again, that repetition to kind of create that unique effect of expanding the cadence. Okay, so then we finally do get a medial caesura on, as we kind of looked at it, you were looking at the actual medial caesura, the one that doesn't get stuck, at measure 79 downbeat. So right here, you would label that medial caesura. That's kind of that door opening then into D major. You're going to see C sharps here. This leading you now into this new tonality of the secondary theme. Okay, so now we have this theme in D major being used. We talked about how Haydn sometimes likes to use upbeats. That little anacrusis there leading into the downbeat is kind of tying into that early feel of the first theme that was introduced. So then we get at measure 83, again, you're going to hear these little emphasis upbeats, having more emphasis in the downbeats, again, for humorous effect. That was one of the things in the list of Haydn's techniques. Then you're going to notice that we have what we call a phrase elision here. As we're moving to the end of this phrase and the start of this phrase, they kind of ally together. You're not going to hear a clear cadence and then a new phrase starting up. Kind of these upbeats are being used to ally the end of the phrase to the beginning of the next phrase. So that's another Haydn technique, using that for kind of humor and kind of unexpected things, which is why this is called, another reason this is called the surprise symphony. That would be another good example of, the expectation of a clear cadence before a new phrase. Aligning those phrases together is one example. Here's some more chromaticism that we're going to maybe not expect as much during that section. And then you're going to see that at the end, we were talking about this in the last PowerPoint, where we have this little connection melodically here that can be a direct segue back to the exposition or a direct segue into what will become the development section, which starts at measure 107. Okay, so this kind of expansion of these eighth notes in 6/8 leading you back to the exposition or leading you kind of deceptively into the development section, which starts at 107 in C major. Okay, so let's go ahead and listen to some of that so you can kind of hear how that exposition sounds in context. And you can follow along in the score here or follow along in the score that you are marking up. Listen for this chromaticism here. Lots of very kind of dark chromaticism. It sounds eerie, more minorish when we're supposed to be in a G major symphony. That C sharp there leading in the violins downward to the C natural, again, kind of unexpected. And then when the vivace starts, it starts in A minor. And then we get G major. Here comes that repetition, that malfunction. And there's that chromatic deflation of melodic pattern there. And there's that counter melody that we get there in that oboe. early development. There's conventional expansion.